we've only got a couple more minutes, could you believe? And I wanted
to talk too much, sorry.
Not too much, not at all. I wanted to, it's perfect for me. I wanted to ask you about this book.
I'm sure.
I teach non-fiction, and I guess that's where my main interest lies, through journalism. But this wasn't what I expected, Kerry.
Sorry.
You can I may mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
Well, I read the blurb, and this line troubled me a little. She goes on a journey into her own past to try and solve this crime, uncovering a new way of writing about crime and herself as she goes. And I thought, sounds like one of those lines. And then I read the book, and I think it's true.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I think it's true. I think it's a very unusual book. And if anyone has read it and you'd like to ask Kerry a question about it afterwards, I'd be very interested to hear. I think it's an autobiography.
Yeah, it is.
And I wonder whether you always set out to write an autobiography. It's about a mystery. Maybe you could just briefly explain the mystery.
The man you can see on the cover.
That's a dead man.
He's been dead for 12 hours. Yes, don't panic.
There's a lot of curiosity in my house. So
yeah, but you've got 8-year-olds. He's perfectly safe. He's dead. He was found sitting on Somerton Beach. You remember the Somerton Beach murder? Yeah, but nobody knows if it was a murder or not. It just wasn't a natural death. He was found dead when he was sitting there all night. He died so gently that the cigarette he was smoking went out in his mouth and it tipped onto his lapel without burning it. He had a tummy full of pasty. He hadn't thrown up at all. He wasn't distressed. His face is perfectly calm. His cause of death was undetermined. He was poisoned by some unknown poison. In his pockets were no labels at all to identify him, except in this one, his fob pocket, was a little piece of paper torn out of the end of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a long and a very interesting poem by a guy called translated by Edward Fitzgerald, which everybody had a copy of in this is 1948. So then they found the matching bit of paper. Tamam Shud means the end, but it's a Persian version of the end, but it also means an indissoluble mystery. And in the doctor's car at Mosley Street, which is above the beach, they found the rest of the book, in which there is a code which has not yet been broken by anyone, even though the remarkable mathematicians of the University of Adelaide are still working on it, and I personally think if it can be broken by computer, they will break it. In Central Station, they found a suitcase which also had no labels in it. And it also had no other stuff. Anybody who's travelled overseas knows you come back with, foreign coins and stamps and, junk indicates postcards you never got round to sending, stuff that indicates you've come from one place and you've been to some other place. This was a totally sanitised suitcase with enough clothes in it for 3 days. He had rather a leery taste in nightwear, which I rather liked, and the shoes would have fitted his feet, and the pocket of his suit in which he was found dead, the pocket had been repaired with orange barber waxed thread, which is not something, as any seamstress will know, you usually use to repair pockets. And it was also not sold in Australia. There was a skein of that thread in that suitcase. The suitcase is linked to him, he's linked to the suitcase. In no case is there any idea of who he is, where he came from, what he was doing there, and what killed him. And we still don't know. Now, my father in 1948 had just got discharged from the army. He'd been stringing wires at Woomera. He was a signaller. And he palled up with an old mate of his called Killer Dunn, who was a fighter, a boxer. It was his killer left hook. He was a very sweet person, my mother says. Anyway, and he was bumming around Adelaide for the whole period, and he told me about that case when I was a child, and I should have realised there was something wrong with it because it had no end. All of his stories were really good. He told very good stories, my dad, in that outback kind of way. That was the night the cook went troppo and went after the boss with an axe kind of story. But this one had no ending. I should have known there was something wrong with it. So when I went to Adelaide as a fruit picker, because fruit picking was a reasonable money at the time, and I hated working in factories, so I used to pick grapes. very soothing if you want a job picking outdoors, pick grapes because you don't have to bend and you don't have to climb. Apples you've got to climb. Strawberries and stuff like that, you wreck your back. Whereas grapes, you just snip, fling, snip, fling. And although when I was writing it, my snipping finger went, wobbly on me, and I thought, oh, you remembered that, do you? I used to stop in at Adelaide, and I was also going on a holiday there. So I told the publisher, they wanted me to write about the Tamam Shud murder. And I said, I'll do it, but I have to write it like a memoir because I'm tied up with it, my father's tied up with it. My father's dead and I miss him terribly, so I will write the story for him. And it's always a good idea to have an idea of who you're writing a story for. So I was writing the story of him. I found the picture of him sitting up on a pole in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And I wrote the story for me, so I could recover from my grief. And I also wrote the story for the Tamam Shud man, Somerton man, because no one who was writing about him was sorry for him. Nobody thought about him as somebody that someone would miss. Some woman bore him. He was someone's child. He was someone's husband, someone's brother. And no one was thinking about him. So I thought I want to bring back his humanity as well as talk about my own loss. And indeed, I had a lot of fun in Adelaide. I actually was there when on the day they said that a great wave was going to hit Adelaide. Do you remember? Anyone remember? Yeah. So I was sitting on the beach with a friend of mine, getting rapidly drunk on red wine. He was drinking the red wine. Actually, he was a she that day. Purple dress, you can always tell. And I'd gone off red wine after that, after grapes. I never saw another grape I ever liked. And we were waiting for the great wave to hit. And down through the crowd, down at Glenelg, down came... I swear I saw this with these very eyes. Don Dunstan in a pink safari suit, riding a camel, which sneered all the people out of its way in the way that camels do. You always know with camels they're just looking at which bit they're going to spit at. And he stood there waiting for the wave. He's not much taller than me. He had immense presence. The only time I ever saw him. But I kept thinking, cool and Achilles, this wave stuff, it's not a good idea. Anyway. That was a remarkable image. I immediately had to go and look it up.
Thank you tonight, Kerry, for the wander inside your head, if I may put it that way.
Pleasure, darling.
It's been great to have you at Rotunda in the West, as you should be. Thank you very much.
It's been lovely to be here.